Grab your popcorn, pour your drink of choice, and hit play. This is Pop, Pour, Play,
where we dive into shows you don't want to miss. I'm Kevin.
I'm Nichelle.
And welcome to our podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Pop, Pour, Play. I'm Nichelle, and today we're talking about Severance Season 2, Episode 6.
And I'm Kevin. If you're new here, don't forget to click subscribe so this way you don't miss any of our drops moving forward.
All right, so if you haven't seen this episode yet, brace yourself because we are about to spill everything.
So let's go ahead and get started. But before we do, I need to know what's in your cup.
I had to bring a little bit of rosé to this episode. Probably should have poured something stronger, but I'll stick with rosé.
I'm in the same boat, and today I did some Pinot Grigio. So cheers.
Cheers. All right. So, what were some of your initial thoughts of this episode?
Definitely an episode that, left me with more questions than answers, but it was good to see some of the connections that people do have. We got to see Gretchen, Dylan G's wife. We saw some interaction between Mark and Helena, which I didn't expect to see. So it was definitely interesting to see that dynamic in this episode.
Yeah, this episode really delved into the complexities of connections. Let's use like Bert and Irving.
Yeah.
Right. Who made this bond as their severed Innie counterparts. And now as Outies, would you still make that connection with the Outie of that individual?
Yeah.
So how deep does that chemistry go? And I think that was kind of on display with every main severed character.
Mm-hmm.
However, the tricky part was the Helly Mark, because Helena also threw herself in the mix by going to the severed floor unsevered.
And Mark now has relationships with each of them.
Basically both of them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So to start us out and kind of recapping what happened in this episode, we know in the beginning that it opens up with Mark struggling to recall what happened, or the memories that he can recall with Ragabi, try to really understand where they are with reintegration. And she's proud of his progress. And Mark is still concerned about what are they doing with his wife, because he saw her in the last episode and like she didn't recognize him. Mm-hmm. Then it goes to Dylan telling Helly and Mark in the kitchen of the Lumen office about the note that Irving left. Of course, Helly is like overzealous to try to get the note, and both Mark and Dylan are concerned with other things at the moment. Also in that kind of first 10 minutes of the episode, it's Milchek and Miss Wong who are talking, and basically Milchek implies to Miss Wong that it's his control of her graduating whatever this fellowship is that's gotten her this position at Lumen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Mark, what we realized that he was kind of preoccupied with when Dylan was talking to them in the kitchen was the fact that he felt he needed to tell Helly that he slept with her Outie, Helena. So
honestly,
thoughts?
I'm glad that he told her. I think it would have been unfair to her, even though they're obviously not sure if they can trust her yet. And it was interesting to see that once she learned that her Outie version of herself really got involved in the Innie world, and she was rightfully pissed off. And I think it was good that she found out, but it also, adds a layer of complexity to their Innie relationship between the two Innies.
Yeah. For me, in that beginning, I thought about, one, why did he feel the need? Did he didn't want to give Milchek the ammunition? Did he feel like Milchek would have used it in some form to divide them? I don't know. I mean, it would have caused the same division of him telling her, I felt like. So I don't know. I think that was just something maybe he didn't need to say.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe he did it to foil, whatever Milchek's backup plan would have been if he needed to pull out that information. I don't know that he was planning on this happening.
Right. And then Milchek, of course, I know he probably was feeling away about Miss Wong, because what did they say in the last episode? Some anonymous tips, or when they were giving him his performance review.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's only you and Miss Wong most of the time, or all of the time. So
the use of big words and the incorrect positioning of his paper clips.
Correct. So I knew he probably would have some words for her. And sure enough, he did. The look he gave her, like, little girl, I control the outcome of your success.
Yeah, I think that in this section of the show, that was the biggest take for me, is that it kind of gave us a little bit of insight into why Miss Wong is there. There is this community of children, I'm assuming they're all children, that are being groomed for this life, and how do we get them to perform in our way? And I think she's the obvious example. She knows so much, and at such a young age, it's odd, right?
Yeah, definitely some fellowship or something that they have these kids go through. So I totally agree.
I think what happened next was Milchick, he really isolated himself almost to punish himself after his poor performance review. It really hit him hard. I think he took it to heart and was really trying to condition himself to be better. We also got to see Gretchen, Dylan G's wife. They had another visit. They're, sharing stories. They kiss. So there's obviously a connection between his Outie's wife and his Innie. We also, I think once Mark reveals that Helly slept with him, I think we start seeing some struggle in Mark's past with... They're struggling with the past with Helena, and Helly almost feels like she got cheated out of the experience and wants it for herself.
Yeah. There was a lot here. One, I'll go with Dylan. Clearly, this wasn't the second visit because they've only shown us in the episodes one other visit. I think that was the very first one.
Yeah.
It seems like they've, of course, I don't even know what the cadence is in which they get together, but they've definitely been having these visits more frequently or more than what we've seen. Yeah.
I agree. And he's become very protective of his time with her. And that's why he's trying to behave and make sure that, he doesn't ruin any sort of privilege that he has.
Just interesting to see that he's now establishing this connection with his Outie's wife, which is basically his wife.
Yeah, they definitely, he was very eager. He wanted more and wanted to get to know his kids. I wonder if we're going to cross a line where it starts becoming too much for his Innie, and maybe he gets re-inspired to, want to get out.
And him take over. Because it does come up now that you're saying that he's kind of sad he doesn't get to be with
go
her
home and see
all the
kids,
time.
right?
Yeah. So right. Oh.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right, we're gonna keep a pin in that one.
Okay. And then the other one was like, I am not about Helly and Mark. I am not for shipping Helly and Mark. I'm not about that relationship. I was upset I had to watch the tent sequence a second time.
I don't know how I feel about it. I think I might be biased in that his wife is on a severed floor, the testing floor, the export floor, wherever. And if I knew my wife was potentially, even if there was like a glimmer of like something, I would want to spend my time exploring that. I know his Innie is a different person,
exactly,
than the outside, so maybe he's able to compartmentalize and keep it separate in his mind. I just feel like I couldn't be able to do that.
I know that's our biased view because we are the audience looking at both and seeing how his Outie is struggling and clearly love this woman so much, and here you are frolicking.
Yeah, crazy.
Although I'm glad that took him away from completing this Cold Harbor, I must say. So it was a little bit of an upside.
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't love it. So
yeah. So then we go to Milchick, who's continues to punish himself. Right, he's trying to restrict his vocabulary. Mark kisses Helly in the hallway and realizes his nose is bleeding. So then he goes to Miss Wong for assistance, who is like trying to uncover, well, what caused your nose to bleed? What exactly were you doing? Right.
Do we think that Miss Wong is aware of potential reintegration sickness?
I was wondering about it. Because she did ask around other symptoms, and I didn't know if that question was merely just to see if there was some other underlying ailment. Or if it was to uncover if there was some possible signs that they've seen in other people, because we know Mark is not the first one to reintegrate.
Yeah. All right, we'll have to see.
So yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's one I thought about. Like, why are you asking all these questions? Because you're a doctor now too.
Dr. Huang.
Exactly.
God.
So then what tripped me out, and I'm sure many viewers, is that then you're seeing Mark kind of split his memory splitting between being in the office with Miss Wong and Helly getting his nose checked out or his symptoms to being in the basement with Bragabi. Meanwhile, Irving arrives to Bert's house to have dinner with Bert and his husband Fields and to meet him. This was really interesting because we also learned that Bert's reasoning behind going through the severance procedure was to ultimately save his soul.
Yeah, I think he said Jesus led him to the world of living.
Oh, right. He said Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah.
I don't think I expected him. I mean, I don't really know his Outie, but I don't think I expected, religion to be a part of the conversation. So to hear that they went to church and the sermon was about how the Innie version of these people have their own souls, so they're judged separately. So what did he do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it also changed my world around Bert. It kind of turned it a little upside down because in this, there were just some interesting looks that he had at the table, but in this, he also he was so confident about not going to heaven, and Fields, his husband, was so confident that he was.
Yeah. It's almost like I think he's almost admitting that he's not a good person.
Yeah.
We've put him in this bucket that he's this honest and caring person.
Because Bert was so sweet, and he's this older guy who's just doing his thing.
It was so innocent,
It was so innocent, so annoying. I think that was one of the bigger things that stood out to me. And also going back to Milchek, I just feel that this situation was to use him. They're temporarily using him. And some of the tension we're seeing in the racial dynamics, just some of the things that they said, he's using big words, this stupid infraction of some paperclip. Well, if you don't know which way to read because the paperclip's on the wrong side, that has more to do with you, not me. And also putting Miss Wong under him rather than giving him someone who's already seasoned and can help with the team. He has to train her as well. I just think the racial dynamics here are fully on display. And now he's going back to discipline himself, dumb himself down, or, to find their approval.
I think he's going to break.
Yeah.
He's obviously conditioning himself to fit into the mold that Keir wants everyone to fit into. There's a line. At some point, he's going to reach his limit. And I think each time we're seeing these scenes of him punishing himself, doing stacks of papers and paper clipping them until his hands are shaking. When does that end? And I think he's going to break, and I think we're going to see something explosive out of him.
I think you're right. There's going to be a break there. I can't wait to see him wreak havoc up in this place.
Who knows? He might switch sides. I don't know.
He might, and I would. I'd be there for that. Popcorn, cocktail. Let's
start looking the other way. Whatever.
Exactly. All right, so where do we leave off from there?
Oh, so what happens next, kind of bringing us back to the dinner, we see Drummond going into Irving's home, breaking in, but I don't think he's really breaking in. He had a ring of keys, so he had access, and they
janitor's ring.
Yeah.
Custodian.
So they obviously, blur the lines between personal life and work life, but he was just walking right in, digging through files, and it was Irving's files on the severed employees.
Yeah, he got into his chest that was locked.
Right. I don't know if you saw on the paper that they focus on, Dylan G's name was at the top of the list. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did, and I kept looking at that paper to try to see what clues were on there. Oh, interesting.
So I saw that kind of going back a second time just to look at some sections. I wonder if that is going to be a problem because now there's a connection on the outside between the two, even though Dylan G's Outie doesn't know yet, but that one knows of the other. essentially. We also get to see Dylan G, his Outie, at home with his kids and his wife Gretchen, who we see is starting to act a little bit more distant. She even lied about her visit to Lumen and said that they canceled it. So I
It
think
was interesting.
yeah, there's a shift in how she's feeling about things. We also get to see Mark at the restaurant. Helena just happens to show up and she pops over and says, "Are you Mark S? I'm Helena. I work with you at Lumen."
Yeah, that was a lot there that I'm like, this lady.
We'll unpack it in a second. And I think the last bit of this section was the dinner that Irving is having with Bert and Fields. I think my biggest takeaway from this section, I think let's talk about Gretchen and her distance now. It's obvious that she is starting to feel something for Dylan's Innie. I feel like he thinks he's become complacent. We know that he's struggled to have a job. She has shared that his drive is no longer there in the first visit, I believe.
Yep.
So now that they're having more and more interactions, he's interested in her and wants to know more and wants to hear about the kids. She's enamored with that now. And now she's seeing her actual husband, the Outie form. She's not pleased.
Yeah, I definitely think that I mean, why else would you lie? I felt like she almost felt like she was cheating. Yeah. And that's why she lied. And she was also sitting at the table as if she was just deep in thought. Like, is it bad for me to want to bring him home and not you come home? Is there a way for us to opt that they don't unsever the chip? I mean, we do know there's some severed people outside because remember that lady, I think this was in, I can't remember what episode in season 1.
The senator's wife.
To the senator.
I don't know. Maybe she kidnaps the Innie and just brings him home, and that's who he is.
I know, now. But everywhere they cross, whether they go up the elevator or through the staircase, it's supposed to deactivate the...
They can hack something. I don't know. Yeah. Figure it out.
So now we've got two dynamics. One, the Innie Dylan is saddened by the fact that he only gets these brief moments with Gretchen and would prefer to be with her all the time, like the Outie. And now you have Gretchen, who's contemplating or thinking maybe, because she had this romantic situation with his Innie, is this cheating? Does she like his Innie more? And probably fantasizing about what that would look like if his Innie was actually outside.
Maybe his Innie is going to get fed up and is going to escape himself, and just surprise her at her door and be like, "It's me."
Right. Exactly. We did the OTC again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. So you talked about this because this was interesting to me in this kind of sequence of events around the nickname that Bert and Fields had for each other. Yeah. And when he said Attila in the beginning, I really didn't catch on. And then he was like, we used to say hun. And then, of course, they changed it. And then I can't remember. I think it was Fields who was like, do you know history? And he was like, he knows history. Bert said that. And I was like, wait, why would you use the term Attila? Given what I know of Attila the Hun, he was like one of the most feared figures of his time, really known for his fierce and mighty leadership for the Han dynasty. And I was thinking, and there's probably some brutality that had to be done to get there, because he did kill his own brother, Attila the Hun, in order to seize all power. So I don't know. I'm thinking, okay, you don't think you're going to heaven, and you guys are like calling each other, or you at least having him call you Attila. What did you do?
He knows he's not a good person. I think that's what it is. I had to Google Attila the Hun to really get an understanding of who they were and the impact that they had. And I think he was like the biggest on expanding the dynasty and doing whatever he had to do that, kind of what you were saying. I think the red flag for me is the timeline that was revealed. I think he said the husband Fields misspoke or slipped and said, yeah, he was with Lumen for 20 years, but Severance wasn't a thing until It was only a thing for the last 12 years. There's a big gap in time. And we also see him trying to cover it up and say, oh, he's just talking, whatever.
Right. He then tried to sweep it under the rug. Like that was the wine talking, or he was, yeah.
I think something had to have happened. Have you seen The Handmaid's Tale? Dumb question. Got it.
Yes, exactly.
For those that haven't watched it, I recommend it. But in that show, The Handmaid's Tale, there is a rebellion or something happens in America where it then becomes this place called Gilead, and they're run.
Yes.
They have their own governing rules, and it's just very different from what we think when we think of America. And we know in Severance, they live in Kier, the world of Kier. There's 260 countries. So obviously something happened where lines were redivided, and now we have an extra 65 countries. Something must have happened. And maybe Bert was part of those early stages of how do we make this a reality? How do we take over, essentially?
Right. That kind of makes me think about Nick from Handmaid's Tale. Who and a couple of other characters who then realized that, you know, what they were fighting for, it wasn't quite what they intended. But that's a good point, because that made me think about it too. He was definitely working for Lumen and not just as a severed employee.
Right.
But it also leads me to a wild prediction that I'm going to hold on to until we get to that part. But yeah, that's a really good point. I do want to say one other thing that I don't think I called out yet was the frolic going back to Mr. Drummond when he was opening up the case or chest in Irving's home. They showed he had like a tattoo frolic on his hand. Not sure what that meant or what the purpose of showing that was, but I'm wondering if that was maybe one of his tempers that he really need to correct or
like overcome.
Yeah. I just thought about that for some reason.
It seems like there must be some sort of, or there was some sort of initiation where you had to go through a series of tests, and can you temper your tempers? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to know more there. I feel like we're going to learn more about that.
Yeah. So to close it out, I will say that I mentioned this earlier that Bert, my world of who I thought Bert might have been when he was on the severed floor, is not who I see he is. I feel like he's very shady. He had some looks that I was like, especially when in the end, when he was walking Irving to the door and he went out, just the look on his face seemed like he was up to no good and have been. And I know the timing of Irving being at his house while Mr. Drummond's able to rummage through Irving's home. It just, of course, that was a setup. So, you know, they were working together. And yeah, as we go into the last, maybe 5-10 minutes of the show, the other part is seeing the dynamic of Helly and Mark talking in that restaurant. And when Helly said to Mark, she called his wife Hannah. And he had to correct her.
She knew what she was.
I was like, what are you trying to accomplish here, girlfriend? You know, he had a strong love with his wife, and you kind of just poking at it with calling her out by her, the wrong name. And he knows she's alive, but they don't know that. At least he does know that part. 2, then talking about, oh, she was so young. What was it again? A car accident. I was really trying to understand. So you want him to set it off by triggering him right now. Is that that's what you're going for?
I'm struggling with her intention for that, right?
That's what I'm saying.
If the goal is to finish the file, stay out of it. Let him go to work, instead of putting things in his head and making him think about things. I almost wonder if she's having some feelings for him.
That's what I think. I think one of my first thoughts, especially when she sat down, is like, wow, Mark, you must have really
did the deed, I guess.
Did the deed. because now she is like stalking you and trying to see what connection she can make outside. And they had this little casual banter when she was like, oh, introduce you to my dad. And he was like, too soon.
Yeah.
But I love, because again, I'm not about their relationship, that she did do the whole Hannah knowing her name was Gemma, or that wasn't the right name, and it really flipped the switch on Mark to just reignite what his purpose was.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. I also can't help but think that the timing is interesting. Obviously, his Innie just had sex with Helly, her Innie. We don't think there are cameras, but who's to say? Maybe they didn't take it out of that room.
Right.
Maybe she's going to see if there's something real there. Because she knows. Maybe she doesn't, but that's just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out. And I'll say last, in that ending where, they did that procedure to speed things up with reintegration. I was cringing the whole time. And I was also like, can we make sure things are sanitized down here? Because you're in the basement and you're cutting my head open. Like, we don't know what her credentials are. Should you be doing this? Do you need assistance?
She was like ready to rip his head open. Like, you know,
Oh my God. I was also like, those gloves are not the traditional gloves you see in the hospital. Those look more like I'm about to color my hair type of gloves. So I was concerned with the whole, she really brought everything.
Yeah, she brought everything she needed. She had an ultrasound machine to look at his brain. All like, let me pull this out my purse real quick.
Exactly. But the fact that they did it, whatever that was, flooding that chip, you saw immediately that memories were coming back. Of course, what timing. Now his sister's at the door and she's like, where you been? You cannot not answer your phone when we're trying to commit corporate espionage, I think she said. Which I love her being ready to take them down.
She's not letting up whatsoever.
She is not letting up. But I am so concerned with him passing out and foaming at the mouth.
Seizing,
and I'm like, oh my, seizing. He hit his head. I was like, catch him. I was yelling at the TV. I can't imagine a world where in this show, Gemma somehow gets back and then he's gone.
I have a prediction here, so
let's go into
it.
Hey, I'm fine with it.
I have two. One I've already said, and I'm just doubling down on it.
Okay.
So I'll start there. If Helly was not pregnant before from the first, sexual encounter, she has to be now. And I think that will be the biggest plot of events if Helena doesn't know that they had sex on the severed floor and all of a sudden she's pregnant one day. Because I'm sure she would have prepared the first time to make sure it doesn't happen if she didn't want it to happen.
Right.
And there is a baby crawling around in the intro with Kier's head on it. So I'm doubling down there.
Oh God, I know. I just kind of in my mouth. I don't know if that's worse than him dying and Gemma coming back, or
I think
Gemma
it's just
coming back and them having this baby situation.
It's going to be such a weird dynamic if everything kind of pans out that way. But I'm here for it.
I hope not. I hope not. I hope not. If you're listening, please change the script if that was the case.
Go re-edit.
Go it. Yeah, just no, I don't want it. And so, no, but I mean, that's interesting. I think that one of my predictions is that Bert, is he really severed? I'm kind of questioning this now. Did he do the procedure? I mean, we know Helena did it. So it could be that they actually really did undergo the procedure, but their outies are
still
actually
involved
in either decision making or helping them expand, right? Their severance. So it could be that he is really severed, but I don't know. No, I'm wondering. I'm questioning that now for some reason.
I'm going to keep an eye on him too. Now that you're saying it, I don't know. Right. I do want to believe that he did it because he thinks he's a bad person, maybe from his early Lumen days prior to the procedure. And if he did, maybe he did do it because his conscience was getting at him and he didn't feel like he was going to heaven. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess
Yeah.
we'll see.
I know. We'll see.
I have one more, and I think it's bringing back the way the episode ended, Mark passing out. I am worried there are going to be, I don't think he's going to die from it. I think I am worried that there are going to be some consequences to this. And it's almost like maybe he'll get trapped in one version of himself, which could benefit, right? If the chip just stops working altogether and now he's just his full self, maybe he doesn't remember, but now he can go to work and not go through this transition and look for his wife. Or I don't know. Maybe he's going to be stuck as his Innie self, and his Innie self is outside in the world, and Lumen doesn't know, and maybe he can use that to his advantage.
Yeah, I mean, he'd really have to learn how to control it. I will say when he had the change, when he was with Miss Wong, when she was looking over his nosebleed, I remember her saying Mark, but I don't know if that was Ragabi. So I don't know if he'll accidentally do something in front of someone. Like when he was in the restaurant with Helena, I thought when he was staring at her, if some memory popped in and he sees her as Helly, he'd accidentally be like, Helly? You know, I was like, please don't.
Where
so
am
he'd
I?
exactly. So he'd really have to master controlling those outbursts and sharing
his
those
sister
moments.
is there, because if that's what happens, she'll game face on 100%.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so who won the episode for you?
I am torn on this one. I think I had someone else in mind at first. I'm going to choose Irving because it was very impactful and really fed the storyline for me. And I just want to continue to explore his, Outie experience.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Miss Wong. She had very few lines in this episode and really low screen time. But when she was helping Mark when he had the nosebleed in the office, I was like, what is there anything this girl can't do? She's taking blood pressure. She was aiding him, asking all these questions. I was like, again, are you Dr. Wong? So I'm going to give it to her because I don't know how old she was and what Girl Scouts camp they put them through to know everything. And I think even in other episodes we were talking about how she was playing that instrument. Just a jack of all trades, this one.
One last thing I'm going to leave us with is I am worried that they're going to leave us with a lot of questions at the end of this season because I still don't know what the goats are about. We got to see more goats, and I just a random thought there. I want to know what these goats are about. And I don't think we're going to get it this season. I just have.
Well, until next time. See you on the next episode.
Yes, and if you didn't already from the beginning, make sure you subscribe.